S.
Oops, not anything now.
I guess not. Nice talking with you. Take care.
You too.
Hi, Randy.
Welcome to the January 30th meeting of the Rotary Club of Jamestown. Please join me in reciting the Pledge of Allegiance, singing our national anthem, repeating the four-way test. I pledge allegiance to the flag of the
United States of America, and to the republic for which it stands, one nation, under God, indivisible, with liberty and justice for all.
Oh, say, can you see?
At the twilight.
Spread stripes and bright stars.
As we watched, we so get spring. And its red glare, the bombs bursting in air, came through the night. That last day.
Let's repeat the four-way test. The things we think, say, or do. Is it the truth?
Is it the truth?
Fair to all concerned.
Is it fair to all concerned?
Will it build goodwill and better friendships?
Will it build goodwill and better friendships?
Will it be beneficial to all concerned?
Will it be beneficial to all concerned?
Our invocation today is by Becky Robbins.
All right, this is a prayer based on Groundhog Day, which is something I'm from Pennsylvania, so it was always a big excitement at our house. It's Thursday. Let us pray. Dear God, it's cold. It's a miracle that we survive at all. Don't let our hearts be frozen. Make us conscious in the cold of those who shiver for want of kindness, justice, and compassion. Wake us from our hibernation, at least long enough to recognize the world around. Let us not shirk from our shadows, but rather face the unresolved. Let us confront those things that need changing and accept the things that simply are. Don't let us rush back to sleep prematurely. O you who descended into the earth and rose again with the dawn, open our eyes to light, even the cold, crisp light of winter. Let it awaken us hope, the impossibility of spring in the depth of winter, the possibility of kindness in a world desperate for warmth. Let us huddle together while we wait. Let us nestle and dream, reach out to each other, and comfort each other in the warmth of our prayers. Amen.
Thank you, Becky. Please welcome President-elect Ruth Lundeen, amongst visiting Rotarians and guests.
Very good. So I'm very happy that once again, George Harper is joining us. He's a guest of Chris Anderson. We hope you'll join us soon.
Announcements. Our Rotary yours recorded today is Rudy and Laura. As always, many thanks to you, the Communications Committee, for all you do to keep our club informed. Fundraising Committee. Please respond to the doodle poll as soon as possible so we can get the meeting scheduled. Fundraising Committee, respond to the doodle poll. Vision Committee meeting Thursday, noon, both on Zoom and at the Community Foundation. Vision Committee at noon. And then to let everybody know, we renewed our contract here with the DoubleTree, and they'll continue to provide us lunches, sandwiches, soups, salads. And we have a minimum of 30 lunches we pay for. So just please make sure we get 30 Rotarians here so we can cover our lunches every week. Any other additional? Ruth?
Just a reminder that we have a team Rotary for the coldest night of the year walk on February 25th. Ask Rotarians to either sign up to walk or to make pledges, donations to our Rotary team. And I will send out another through Club Runner, another link once again to the site so that you can do that online. If you choose not to make a donation through a credit card online, then you can give me money and I will enter that information and mail it in to coldest night of the year. Okay, thanks.
Thank you, Ruth. Please get your tickets ready as we welcome Walt Pickett for today's 50-50 drive.
Today's 50-50 is $34.
$34, today's 50-50. One of our guests.
Guest speaker.
Oh.
Yes, sir. Very good. The winner is the last three numbers 932.
932. Lynn, congratulations. So no Doug Conroe called today. He's sick, so that's going to be a fine for him next week. He's not allowed to miss meetings. But I will do my best to fill in for Doug. Amy Roller, is Amy here? I saw an article that said United Way exceeds the 2022 campaign goal. So, woo, woo. Well, I'd say that's a fine for anybody affiliated or associated with the United Way. Thank you. Fill it up. Oh. Thank you. Thank you. Doors Open Jamestown. I think that was a chamber event, wasn't it, Dan? Sounds, I think it was a pretty good turnout. If anybody had participated in Doors Open Jamestown. And then, do we have any Fredonia graduates, SUNY Fredonia graduates? I saw former Rotarian Mike Metzger recently retired as vice president at SUNY Fredonia, and he was also a member of the Chautauqua County IDA, and he was a previous recipient of the John D. Hamilton Community Service Award. So anybody want to put in $1 for former Rotarian Mike Metzger? I think we need to bring him back. He's retired, looking for something to do, right? And one final one. Eagles fans, any Eagles fans, we're all Eagles fans, graduates of Southwestern, graduates of Mount Union. Let's all put $1 in for Nick Sirianni and the Eagles. Let's go Eagles. Thanks for coming today, Tori. Fly, Eagles, fly. I gotta put $1 in. Any happy bucks? Anybody have any dollars left? Happy bucks. I'm putting $1 in for Ruth. I won't be here next week. I'll be in Syracuse for work. So Ruth is kindly stepping up to manage a meeting. So thank you, Ruth.
The WC Foundation last Friday awarded UPMC Chautauqua a grant allocation of $609,000 for medical equipment. So you'll read about it in the newspaper, and I'll probably get mine next week. I have my picture in the paper, but just really proud to represent our community and represent healthcare in our community. Those dollars stay here in our community. And kudos out to my partner Megan Barone, who was also helpful in that grant allocation selection. Thank you so much.
I ran out of bucks, so I'll have to see Lisa to get some cash back. But thanks for Doors Open, as you already mentioned, John. It was a great day downtown. There were a lot of people out. I know anywhere I went, it was hard to find a parking spot. So we appreciate your support. And if I could also mention, last week, the chamber was involved and assisted with 5 ribbon cuttings all across Chautauqua County. So that's good news. We've had 3 in the Dunkirk area, 1 in the Jamestown area, and then 1 ending the day out in Cruisburg on Friday. So check those out. Check our newsletter out. We should have pictures from all those. But
Well, I just happened to notice in the chat that Doug Conroe says, great job, John.
I'm putting in for the Lucille Ball Little Theater. They have a show opening this weekend. It's this weekend and next weekend. The Play That Goes Wrong. If you want to go see some entertainment, live shows in Jamestown, you got to go see it. It's going to be a lot of fun. And then they also have tryouts. So if you've ever wanted to put your foot on the stage, I did it once. Everybody else can do it. You can certainly go out, try out for Little Women. That will be directed and done in February. Or tryouts are the weekend of the 6th and 7th, and then the show is in March. So let us know. And finally, one more thing. I put 5 in so I can talk a lot. Actually, this is Rotary related because social committee, FARCH. I need ideas. I want to know what people want to do. I'm going to send out a little survey. If you could at least respond, let me know, or even just send me a quick email of what you think we should do. I kind of want to do it on a weekend. I kind of want to make it a fun event to be social with our Rotarian friends again. So come up with some ideas. I have a few locations we can do an event at. I just want to, could be a theme. It could be just things to do, whatever you think we might like to do as a group. We used to have so much fun at these. We had a chili cook-off and did swing dancing once. I remember this is going way back. We did a 50s. We did a luau. We've done I'm trying to think of some other 50s themes. We did a 20s flapper dance theme. So we've done so many things. I just want some ideas of what people would like to attend. So let me know.
Great. Thank you. Any other happy bucks? Anybody online? It is my pleasure to welcome Kirk Young, the program committee, to introduce our speakers.
It's my pleasure today to introduce our speaker, Steve Kilburn from Combat Addiction CHQ. I also want to introduce 2 of Steve's staff members who are here to support him. We've got McKenna Graham and then Katie Young. So with that, I have a short bio here for Steve that I'll read that I'll share with the club here. So Steve Kilburn is the grant projects director at the Chautauqua County Department of Mental Hygiene, overseeing federal grants and partnering with multiple agencies to address addiction and overdoses in Chautauqua County since 2019. Mr. Kilburn grew up in Western Pennsylvania and in Central New York. He obtained his bachelor's degree at Cornell University, served as a U.S. Peace Corps volunteer, and later obtained a master's degree from Regent College in Vancouver, British Columbia. He worked for many years as a credentialed drug and alcohol counselor. And in addition to his current role in addiction public health, he's a part-time pastor at Hillcrest Church. He serves on the UPMC Chautauqua Board of Directors, and he and his wife Jennifer reside in Jamestown. So with that, turn some time over to Steve Kilburn.
Thank you. Thank you very much. I appreciate the opportunity. One of the things I didn't include, and so Kirk didn't include in my bio, is I have a pinched nerve in my back. And if you've ever had a pinched nerve in your back, you will know why. In probably about 60 seconds, I'm going to say I've been standing up long enough, and it's time for me to sit. So if you'll give me that grace, I will do much of the short talk that I have, probably sitting down. But I do appreciate, we appreciate the opportunity to share with you some of what I'm sure you know, and I'm going to try to avoid just recounting the realities that are unavoidable about addiction and overdoses in our county, but tell you some particulars that maybe aren't as well known, and then try to paint at least an overview of the things that we have going on in Chautauqua County as a response to the, well, I kind of called it a slow rolling crisis. Crisis is the right word for it. Crisis usually entails a sort of a, beginning, middle, and end, and sadly, we don't seem to see the end yet. But overdoses, addiction generally in our county, it is a crisis, not a crisis unknown to really most every community in America, indeed the country as a whole. So it's not unique to us, doesn't put us in some unique category, but that's cold comfort, I think, to know that there are many others in the same boat as us. Since 2019 especially, and by all means, we've had troubles and concerns about addiction well before that. But in 2019 especially, the rates of overdose and particularly overdose deaths in the county, in the state, in the country reached historic highs. 2021 saw the most fatalities due to drug overdoses in our county than we have ever had. While the data for 2022 isn't fully complete, it will be similar, sadly, to 2021. Of course, we attribute, and here, this is my leg has told me that time is up. We attribute some of this increase, to the pandemic. I don't know if that suffices as an explanation. I'll say a little bit more about what I think is, as you would know, one of the most powerful contributors to the rising rates of overdose deaths, and that's the presence of a particular drug in the drug supply named fentanyl. And I will, like I said, say a little bit more about that. But, the nature of addiction is such, and this is born out of many years working in the field, both with individuals with addiction, their families, and now on a more public health level. Any attempts to try to explain it in a simple term, in a shorthanded kind of way, will always defy the realities of what addiction is like, the reasons that people find themselves chemically addicted, the paths out of that reality, the complexities of addiction, the realities that exist at the level of the individual, physically, psychologically, their family, whole communities, the nation, geopolitical realities, all of them come to play a role in what turns out to be reports like 2021 was the worst year in history for overdose deaths. It's a very complex condition. And I say that not to just sort of throw up a mist, but to try to, I think, disabuse us of the idea that there is any kind of simple one solution for this really vexing problem. And by the way, when I say it's a vexing problem, I'm not, of course, not going to ask for any hands or anything here, but it is more common than not to be what I would call 1 degree of separation away from addiction in our country. And that's not just me kind of guessing, that's built around educated guesses on the numbers of people that, based again on other community, actually more like state and national averages, and some other indicators, proxy measures, that would give us a sense that there might be ballpark figures, something like 15,000 of our county neighbors who have some kind of a chemical dependency. It might be a bit less, it could be more, but it would be in that ballpark. But consider that, what, each of those might have 4 people, and conservative estimate, whose lives are affected because of the chemical dependency of their loved one. You can do the math, but you will discover that you have you've passed the 50% mark of adults in Chautauqua County. It is more common than not be 1 degree of separation away from addiction. So the prevalence of this is huge. And I say that because I think we should say it, because in spite of the majority having some close relationship to addiction, this addiction's many dynamics and features are that it's extremely isolated. Most people feel they're the only one, and that does not help. Why do people get involved? It's hard to, again, come up with a simple explanation for that, but I suppose on the back end, what are the consequences? That becomes pretty evident. Tragically, again, that's not the only measure, it's the most tragic of them, but the other health issues and the impact that it has on our healthcare system. Again, the impact and the influence and the well, the very difficult, to say the least, experiences that family members go through with a loved one with an addiction. Obviously, it has a relationship to crime, or by definition, at least by possession and of course sales. And then just at the level of cost to whole communities in any host of numbers of ways. Attempts have been made to estimate what that might be. Of course, it depends on how wide you cast the net because addiction affects so many things, but it tallies up into the millions of dollars for our county to address addiction or its direct consequences. Well, let me tell you, that's probably everything I've said so far. You may have already known, but let me tell you some things which you may know, but maybe not. What's happening, what's different, maybe what's changing in the landscape of addiction that we can view? Well, one thing again, probably not news to you, but the prevalence of fentanyl. This is a synthetic opioid in the drug supply has become next ubiquitous. It began as something which was found laced, as often called, in heroin. But it has moved well beyond that and is found in all kinds of illicit drugs, including non-opioids like methamphetamine, cocaine. And so people do die of a fentanyl overdose. It's an extremely powerful opioid who may have had no intentions, in fact, may have had no opioid dependence at all, and no intentions of consuming it. Today, and well, I say today, but I'm really referring to the deaths that we are aware of from 2022. I say aware of, it's not that we don't know overdose deaths occurred, so we don't have all the data from them. But by all appearances, heroin has actually disappeared. No one in 2022, at least in the toxicology studies that we have today, had heroin in the system. They may have thought they were taking heroin, but heroin has been, in essence, driven away from the market and replaced by a much more powerful and almost certainly profitable chemical, fentanyl. Here's what's different today in America, because addiction and overdoses, for that matter, maybe, well, indeed, not at the rates that we see them today, but these are not new phenomena. Addiction, I guess, when there's something to be fermented, probably addiction started. That's not new. Here's what is, though, I think, uniquely new about the situation that we're in today. The two most prevalent chemicals in fatalities are both synthetic. They're man-made. They have no agricultural connection, namely fentanyl and methamphetamine. And the implications of that is that they're not dependent upon weather, long supply chains, warlords, interdiction opportunities, etc. And they can be produced in quantities that are staggering. Many of us will remember, was it about maybe a month or a little more ago when the Jamestown Police Department seized, I suppose, 50,000 fentanyl pills here in Jamestown. So there was something, well, I'm going to misquote it, but a large bus in Dunkirk just, I think, over the weekend with quantities of fentanyl that, admittedly, this isn't necessarily what would have happened, but could have killed like 4,000 people. I mean, that's just in a single bus. These are chemicals that are being produced en masse. They're made out of legitimate industrial chemicals that can be purchased on the market and then kind of cooked up in loosely termed laboratories, principally in Mexico, with chemicals coming from China, India, and other places. Legitimate chemicals, but being used, obviously, to produce illegitimate and deadly drugs. Fentanyl overdoses were the leading cause of death in 2019, 2020, 21, probably 2022. I haven't gotten that data. The leading cause of death, fentanyl overdoses for Americans 18 to 45. More than COVID, more than car accidents, cancer, or suicide. And that age range, 18 to 45, does make up the bulk, the majority. By no means exclusively, certainly folks older than 45, but more are in that range than not. Methamphetamine. So fentanyl has grown and grown. It's topping around 90% of all deaths. Methamphetamine in its presence has grown and grown. And as I said, the quantities have only gotten greater because of the production and the nature.
Sorry, what is methamphetamine?
So methamphetamine is, again, a synthetic drug. It's a stimulant. Yeah. So, yeah, I mean, I'll leave it at that, but it's a different class of drug. And once upon a time, people sort of had their drug of choice, as the phrase went, but now polydrug use, especially for overdose fatalities, is the norm. And sometimes intentional, almost certainly, but not always. Sometimes people are getting drugs they didn't expect. There have been sort of, as it's been described, waves of the opioid crisis throughout the United States, beginning with overprescribing of prescription opioids, OxyContin specifically. So we know, part of that story that kind of got turned down, if you will. And heroin then kind of emerged. That's kind of number two. Number three, then, as you heard me say, fentanyl comes to really replace. I don't think heroin will ever come back, which is a kind of an odd thing to say. But just from a purely market point of view, it's hard to see the advantage of it. So fentanyl becomes kind of the third phase, and I don't know if it, or wave, and I don't know if it is right to call it a wave, but we're, I think, going to see, as other places in the country have, increasing amounts of fentanyl, but not laced into other drugs, not in a sort of powder or tar form, as it's called, some ways of preparing it, but in pills, much like those 50,000 that were seized here. Fentanyl is being produced by drug cartels who appear to be legitimate pharmaceutical medications. There is no such thing, by the way, as a legitimate fentanyl pill. Fentanyl doesn't come as a pill. It comes as a patch. It comes as sublingual strips. It comes in IV solutions. But the cartels, exceedingly well-resourced, have come up with means to make it look like another medication. And this is happening across the country. I pray it doesn't happen in our county, but a young person in particular, with probably no addiction whatsoever, but making a really bad choice of taking a friend's offer of a hydrocodone for a back injury and end up taking a fentanyl pill and dying on the spot from an overdose. I fear that the next wave, especially vulnerable for younger people, are the pills that appear to be legitimate pharmaceuticals. That once upon a time, again, no defense of this, but kid take something from grandma's cupboard, and it was a hydrocodone at least. It won't be a hydrocodone. No, well, I'd say hydrocodone. It's being made to look like other medications as well. So, okay. I use up all my time yet? I'm not all right. Okay. You heard in the bio that Kirk read that I am a part-time pastor. So if you say 15 minutes, like we just don't even know what that means. But I will try to keep mindful of the time. So there's a lot more we could say about the nature of addiction and overdoses, et cetera, in the county. Much of it would only confirm what I think you probably already know. It is worth noting, Jamestown is sort of the most concentrated area of overdoses and of overdose fatalities. Of course, it's a larger population, but even per capita, this is sort of in the county, the epicenter. The second, no, not surprisingly, is the Dunkirk-Fredonia area. Chautauqua County is recognized by the DEA as a high-intensity drug trafficking area. Many acronyms that we have to live with. HIDTA, high-intensity drug trafficking area, and it has been for some time. Probably, I don't know, but I'm guessing, well, proximity to some cities, but also the two major highways that meet here in our county. But let me take a little bit of time, not so much now to talk about what the problems are, but what solutions are we bringing to bear? What are we doing? And very happy to have Katie and McKenna here, as you heard, they're part of the staff on what is the Healing Communities Study. One of the initiatives that we have funded in Chautauqua County by the federal government is a very large study, which is also an intervention. But it's an attempt to find some best practices, start to turn around this growing trend of overdose fatalities. Doesn't really introduce any new interventions per se, but how do you scale them up in an effective way? So we want to, and we have been as a county, I say we, it's not us personally, but working with our many partners in Chautauqua County, distributing Narcan. So if you're familiar with Narcan, Narcan can reverse an opioid overdose. And it is reversing opioid overdoses. Of course, we don't know the numbers entirely, hundreds and hundreds, thousands really of naloxone kits, or they're nasal sprays. They're not hard to administer, but hundreds, if not thousands, have been distributed and are being distributed around the county, and hundreds are definitely being used. Surprising in my mind, numbers of overdoses actually do get reversed throughout the county. And I won't take the time now to sort of substantiate some of the indicators of that, but it would appear to be something that's happening very, very frequently. So with the Healing Communities Study that we're a part of, big study with NIDA, National Institute of Drug Abuse, as well as Columbia University are our partners in that. More naloxone, Narcan distributed, working to get more people who need to be in treatment into treatment. And there are plenty of treatment opportunities in Chautauqua County, but people need to certainly know about them. And as I'll mention here before I finish, there's another barrier in that regard. And then prescribing and dispensing safely with medication. So this, along with a lot of other initiatives, are happening here in Chautauqua County. Could one of you hold up our combat addiction, CHQ.com? And the card and this handsome look. Yours to pick up on your way out, if you would. I always tell people you are encouraged to take it, just always drink from it with the logo facing out so people can see it. Combat Addiction, CHQ.com, perhaps obviously is a website and kind of a logo, branding as our public facing brand, but it is an attempt to give a one-stop place for folks to find resources in Chautauqua County about help for addiction. And you can go there and see what's available, but you could, when you're there, find really all of the treatment providers and be able to actually search for them. There are so many, according to the level of need that's here in the county. And a person could go there and actually you'll see a banner right on the, well, every one of the pages that just simply says, if you need help finding help, click here, here's a contact form. We'll help you personally get connected with services if needed. There are lots of services here in Chautauqua County, multiple outpatient clinics. We have an inpatient rehab, inpatient residential services. Methadone clinic is now open in Dunkirk, first time in Chautauqua County. We have agencies that have peers who assist people with recovery, folks that have been themselves through addiction and are in recovery. Prevention Works is in every school district to some degree, as well as working directly with families. And as I said, we're trying to message information through the Combat Addiction CHQ.com website. But again, before I close, I want to wrap up by saying, while these are all things that we're doing and doing more of, and I don't think I'm self-serving to say that it's really a reflection on me, but rather our county, to say that there are many counties that would be envious of the kinds of services that we have available in Chautauqua County. But in spite of that, we're still facing this struggle and historic levels of overdoses. So here are some of the things that what we want to do more of. We do, as I said, want to encourage people with an addiction to get into treatment. We want to increase the amounts of Narcan that are distributed. But there are some other things that I want to close with this, that I think we have to acknowledge as realities in this complex world of addiction. Not that they provide a solution, but I think they at least give us clarity about what we're up against. Number one, I don't think the story about the role of organized crime is included in the realities of the affliction of our county enough. You know, Pfizer, arguably rightly, was vilified for peddling what they knew to be an addictive substance and profiting from it. This is happening on a massive scale in the world of organized crime. That doesn't mean like, oh, let's sue them. I mean, obviously it's a little more complex than that, but I don't think the narrative is being told accurately until we realize that our most vulnerable in some ways are the victims of organized crime, and they're killing our neighbors. I don't know what that implies, but I think unless we tell the story clearly and accurately, we're going to keep chasing around something. The reason that people are dying isn't because there aren't services. It's because the sophistication of an organized crime that profits off of people's addiction is just continuing to grow. Now, that is number one, as a major contributor towards addiction. Number two is that there are, as I said earlier, complex reasons why people end up being addicted, and there shouldn't be any stereotyping. People become addicted because of physical health problems. I don't know if it was 2000 and I went to my doctor with my back pain. If he'd have given me OxyContin, I kind of hope not. I don't think I need that. But I'll tell you what, if you've had pain, as I have for like 3 or 4 weeks, it just doesn't go away. You start to think twice, don't you? Like, yeah, maybe. Anyway, it makes us sympathetic. People do have very severe pain problems. That can lead to addiction, mental health problems. Certainly the circumstances of their family and home, peers that they are around. Clearly genetics plays an important part in all of this as well. And then there are contributors to addiction that we just don't know yet. I mean, I should say this, there are contributors to why people end up dying of an overdose that we maybe don't have the best handle on. And I say that because one of the things we're going to be doing with the support of our county executive, sheriff, interim medical director, is starting a review of the fatalities in our county, a deeper dive. We know demographics, etc., but we want to try to understand even better what's happening. Why is this leading people ultimately dying? Here's another reality, and I am just about done, I'm sure you. You know what it means when a pastor says nothing. But no, we have to acknowledge that the problem or the barrier, let's say, of folks getting into treatment isn't, in fact, it isn't even primarily access to treatment. Access to treatment is very important. And there are barriers to it. But studies indicate quite clearly that those who have a chemical dependency in the United States, who are not in treatment because they don't think they need treatment. You know, I haven't in the past, I haven't gone to a gym in the area in some time. The reason I don't go to a gym in Chautauqua County isn't because there are no gyms in Chautauqua County. Why don't I go to the gym in Chautauqua County? It's not even that I don't even think I need to go to the gym in Chautauqua County, but there is just something like, yeah, well, maybe next week, next month, next year. Motivation. And I say this not disparagingly to blame the victim, if you will, or blame the patient, as we might say, but to say it as a reminder that for many people, substance use isn't perceived as a problem in any given moment. It may be perceived as the solution to their mental health, their pain, their despair, what have you. And the idea that, well, you know, we're going to make treatment even more available to you, which is a good thing and will meet some needs, isn't going to meet a lot of people's needs. We rather want to work with people to help understand that there's hope, there's a path forward, that sobriety and recovery are possible for them. Move the needle in motivation. And until we do that, we could have a clinic on every corner. To that end, I sometimes say Suboxone, that's one of the treatments for opioid addiction, methadone, they don't treat hopelessness. They don't treat mental health problems that are otherwise untreated. They don't address some of the contributing social determinants that are making this a very sticky problem in our county. And so we have to think more broadly than just imagining that if we just build it, they will come. And to that end, we, for example, one of the places where motivation can increase is with the criminal justice system. People that find themselves in that, and our own sheriff, as well as others, are very committed to, when appropriate, with not somebody who's selling drugs, but using them and ending up in the criminal justice system, getting them help and treatment if they're willing at that moment, rather than only ending up in the criminal justice system alone. Two final things. We need to work more with family members, and we intend to do that. Whereas people with an addiction are not in treatment, are often not at any moment in time. It can change. People can be helped to move their motivation, but at any given point in time, as I said, studies are clear. They're not in the bulk inclined to treatment at any given moment, but their family members are almost always far more motivated for their own sakes, as well as being actually quite influential, ultimately, with the right help in getting their loved one to move into treatment. Final thing I want to say is, after this sort of, I hope not, but depressing topic, is to end on a note that I think we also need to be reminding ourselves of. Lots and lots and lots of people are in recovery. Lots of people have tremendous and inspiring stories about past addiction, active addiction, and their current ability to live without substances today. Those paths don't always look alike, but it is not an uncommon story. And one of the things we want to continue to do and do more is tell those stories. They inspire and they bring hope. If we have any time, I would entertain a question or two, if that's okay. Yeah. Okay. We'll let,
Thanks, Steve. In my past life, harm reduction was a very controversial thing several years ago. And I guess my question is, where does harm reduction, maybe people don't know what that technique is. How does that stand today in treatment?
yeah, Vince, thank you. And by the way, as I think many of you know, Vince really put the concerns about addiction front and center on the county's agenda during his time as county executive. Yeah, well, Vince, I think the reason that that's kind of a confusing question is because two people using the term sometimes doing different things. So harm reduction is an attempt to acknowledge the fact that maybe tomorrow this person who is today addicted isn't going to be just done. That what we would better do in moving them towards a day where maybe full recovery is their reality is to help them stay alive. So the distribution of Narcan around the county, people overdose, they use Narcan. Narcan does not treat addiction. It treats an overdose. But we really emphasize getting it into the hands of people, loved ones, or those around that say somebody at high risk. That's harm reduction. To give somebody a chance for the next day and the day after to get to a place where recovery, they deserve to live. And that is harm reduction that has been active and growing in the county for some time. But other folks in other places, I'll just say this because you asked, they would include safe injection sites under the harm reduction. And I'm speaking personally, I'm not convinced that that's either helpful or wise. And when you have a conversation or hear somebody talk about harm reduction, you should ask them what they mean. We want to keep people alive and give them hope for a better tomorrow. I think that there can be some real downstream negatives of certain kinds of harm reduction efforts, normalizing some things that will be all the more difficult to manage later.
My question. My question is about harm reduction. So in some cities across the country that there are cities that are giving out and handing out test kits for drugs. So you can test if your drugs have fentanyl in them. Is that something that is available to people, or does that fall under harm?
Yeah. No, we do make fentanyl test strips widely available, free. Candidly, I don't think they're nearly as, they're a good tool. But as I said before, fentanyl is becoming so ubiquitous, the assumption should be an illicit drug has it. And there is, the only downside, there is a potential for a false negative if it's not tested properly. But all of that said, done right, it can be a tool to help somebody avoid taking an overdose of fentanyl, to learn what, and it doesn't test quantity or, it just presence or not. So it's got a value, but it's not as valuable as maybe it's thought to be. But we do make it.
So earlier you were talking about organized crime and how that could possibly play a factor. Whenever you hear conversations about this, a lot of people like to bring up, I guess, the libertarian argument, decriminalization and consumption sites, get people out in the public so they can talk to them more. I'd just love to hear your opinions on that.
Yeah, you don't have time for my opinion. But look, there are places where decriminalization maybe should be at least weighed. It's been done in a manner by what. Again, I don't want to get into the deeper weeds, but decriminalization is different than legalizing it. You get picked up driving 65 miles an hour in a 45-mile zone, you're going to get ticketed, but you're not going to end up with a criminal record. That's the distinction. Now, we don't say, oh, whatever, legalize speeding, who cares? It's all good. All right. So there is a consequence, it's just of a different kind. And in some places, Portugal in particular, where drugs have been decriminalized at the personal level of personal use, it's not a legalization, in spite of what some say. In fact, folks are kind of hauled before, but they're brought before, obliged to go before a kind of a panel that talks to them, interviews them, and comes up with a plan that they are obliged to follow, or they will face criminal charges. Decriminalizing is, there's nobody like the cartels that would love the opportunity to avoid, the occasional interdictions that take off maybe 10% of what they're sending into the country. You probably get a flavor for it.
We recognize Jamestown and Dunkirk as being epicenters. What's the picture like in the rural parts?
Yeah, well, overdoses and fatalities do happen across county. There's no, I don't think there's any zip code, let's say, that's not experiencing that, and sometimes fatalities. But it is distinctly concentrated in the urban areas. And that's important to be said, because while we recognize that this can and does afflict folks resident or geographically, we do need, as any public health measure would, lean into the hotspots. And it's not even all of Jamestown. You wouldn't be surprised if I could, as I could, tell you what parts of Jamestown. Those are the parts that we want to reach those families, those communities, to bring hope, services, a different sort of potential. That's just trying to be strategic.
Does anyone online have a question? No?
Do you know how many people who go to the doctor for a legitimate car accident, broken arm, whatever, and are prescribed painkillers, then go on to become addicted?
Yeah, that's a good question. The short answer is no. I don't know. But the longer answer is, from what I understand, that pathway in, well, it's rare. It is rare. Those medications might get diverted to somebody else, and that becomes a pathway. But prescribed medications from a doctor, it's not that it doesn't happen, it does. It's not, as I understand it, the main way that people end up.
Thanks for being here, Steve. I think that most of us here probably have some sense of another avenue as a leader within the faith community. How would you say that informs your work? in either dealing with supply or demand.
Well, for one thing, it does acknowledge that this is a prevalent problem. Even though there are concentrated places where overdoses and deaths are occurring, addiction isn't quite so concentrated. And the families of people with an addiction are even probably less concentrated. Again, not asking for a show of hands, but I would be shocked if I didn't find a large number of you would say, yeah, I would be somebody 1 degree of separation away. So we recognize this is a reality, this is kind of a human experience, and sadly, it's becoming only worse. And yes, for many people, whether it's the sort of spirituality of the 12-step program or specific in the church, etc., it is a source of hope, a different kind of a narrative that they begin to see themselves moving away from a former lifestyle. Thanks, Paul. Thank you, everyone. Don't leave without a mug and a, what do we have? Bags, shopping bags. How many of us go to Wegmans or Cops? And oh man, I forgot again. Well, if you're going today, you'll have a bag with you and some other material. Help yourself, please.
Thank you, Steve. One of Rotary's major international programs is to eradicate polio in the world. In honor and thanks for your presentation to our Rotary Club today, we'll make a donation in your name that will vaccinate 4 children who will never experience polio in their life. Remember this year's International Rotary theme, Imagine Rotary, and we are adjourned.
And a great reminder of the day. It's remainder.
Right.